The auto type is a new feature in C++11, and it's quickly becoming very common because it's extremely handy. Here I have a working copy of autotype.cpp from chapter 5 of the exercise files. And you notice down here on line 12, I'm declaring a variable as auto, and I'm assigning to it the return value from this function, which is string. And what that means is that this variable is actually going to be of type string because the compiler knows that this function is a string, returns a string type, and so it can automatically fill this in, and that's what that's for. Down here in my printfs, I'm printing the value of the X object and also its type using this type ID class from the type info header. Now, when I build and run, you'll see that X is getting printed, and that's this string here. This is a string. And the type is this really, really long thing, but you'll see somewhere in the middle of it here, it says basic string. This is the type of thing that you get out of type ID, and it'll be different in different compilers and with different libraries. So if you're running on a PC or on some other operating system, you'll see something different, but it will, at some point, it'll say something like basic string. So keep in mind that this auto type is still strongly typed. This X is still of the type string, and everything that means still applies. The only thing different here is that it's derived automatically by the compiler, but all the other rules of usage still apply. Here's a more common example. I'm going to go ahead here and add an include for the vector header. And we're going to declare a vector. We'll learn more about vectors in the chapter on the standard template library, the STL. And I'm going to come down here and I'll just remove these things and I'll declare a vector. It'll be a vector of ints, and I'll call it VI for vector of ints, and I'll initialize it with some integers. And now I'm going to use a for loop to iterate through this vector of ints. That ought to be pretty easy, right? So first I have to declare an iterator, and that looks like this. So that's what the type looks like, and I'll call it IT for iterator equals vi.begin. And while IT is not equal to vi.end, and this is how you use iterators in the standard template library, and we'll increment the iterator, and then we'll print out the value. Now, when I build and run, you see it works. Now, this is really a little bit cumbersome, isn't it? Wouldn't it be nice if instead of typing all that, we could just type auto and build and run and get exactly the same result? Well, we can. And that's because the compiler knows what type vi begin returns, and vi begin returns that iterator type. And this is where auto is really, really handy. Auto is a whole lot easier to type without error and easier to remember than the long and cumbersome vector iterator, especially if it's a vector of something more complicated than just an int. It can be a vector of other vectors. It could be all kinds of stuff. This could be a very, very long thing. And so instead, to be able to just type auto is actually pretty awesome. In fact, an even easier way to do this using the new range-based for loop in C++11 is to simply say auto I colon vi and print out I here and get that same result. Now that's a whole lot easier than what we were doing before. It's clear, it's readable, and it's much less prone to error both in typing and in reading. So this feature is a real improvement. It's not without its dangers. Be careful to only use auto types where the implications are clear and the usage is concise. Otherwise, you could potentially sacrifice readability and even introduce errors that could be hard to find.